Hey everyone, welcome to our third podcast episode of From Boots to Brass, all about the job. I'm City Northport Fire Chief Scott Titus, and I've had the honor and pleasure of interviewing thousands of firefighters and fire officers during my career. And I always ask, what's your story? How'd you get into the fire service? Through those conversations, I've learned that everyone has a story, from where they started to what drives them, and even the impactful moments that made it all worth it. In each episode, I'll sit down with members of our crew to swap stories from the job, talk about what it really means to serve our community. I'm glad you're with us. Let's jump in. Today's special guest is Lieutenant Matt Johnson. Morning, Matt.
Morning, Chief.
How are you?
I'm great.
It's newly promoted Matt Johnson. Huh?
Yes, sir.
How recently did that happen?
Coming up on a month.
Wow.
3 weeks.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure you're very proud of that.
Absolutely.
We're great to have you on board in that role. You know how important that is forming the future of the fire service and getting our guys ready as
For
the
sure.
guys and gals. So first thing I'm going to let you do is give you a shout out to your shift station and a word to your crew if you want.
Okay. I've been at 82 for a long time, so I'll do a general shout out, just 82 in general. I've been, in my time here, I've spent more than half my time at Station 82, and I love it. But recently moved to 82B with the promotion, so shout out to my crew there. I'm super excited to be there. It's really great to be able to be a new lieutenant and stay at your station. New guys, new crew, but I've interacted with them, which is nice, and being in an area and a station that I'm familiar with there's a level of comfort there, which is pretty cool. So I'm excited to be there and ready to get to work.
Good. Who's on the new crew?
I've got engineer Dmitry Semenov. I've got paramedic FTO Chase Westbrook, paramedic Brett Fye. I've got Bogdanov, Peyton Foreman, Zach Zemke, who's precepting, just starting precepting tomorrow, actually, for his paramedic.
Nice.
He's new to the crew. And firefighter paramedic Nick Desi.
Solid. Fantastic. You got a good group there.
Yeah.
All right, so give us the Matt Johnson bio. Age, family, origins, roots, stuff like that.
So I am 39 years old.
Okay.
I'll be 40 this summer. I grew up in Venice, born and raised here, lived here till I was about 21. Moved away to Rhode Island, which is where not where I met my wife, but where she's from. So lived there for a couple years. Then we moved to North Carolina, lived there for a few years. Ultimately ended up back here. Since we've been back, we've had 2 kids. I have a son, Gabriel, who will be 10 next month, and a daughter, Ruth, who will be 5 in August.
Awesome. So what's Gabriel doing? He doing any sports or anything?
Gabriel does Ninja Warrior.
Okay.
He does it here in Northport. And he loves it. He also has been learning how to do piano, but he's done different things throughout the years, baseball and different things like that, and he likes to try new things, and we try to encourage him to, you got to be involved in something.
Where does he do the Ninja Warrior here in Northport?
Northport Gymnastics.
Fantastic. Yep. So a little shout out to them.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that they had that.
Yep.
All right. How about the little one? What's she doing? Does she do anything?
She is in VPK. She's got a couple weeks left, and then she'll be done with that. But she tried dance for a little while, but she ended up just kind of sitting in the corner a lot. So,
all right.
Well, now that she's getting a little older, we'll start getting her into some things too.
Okay. And so back to so your wife Jess is from Rhode Island.
Yes.
But did you meet her down here and then you moved up there, or?
In a way. I lived down here at the time. She was still up there.
Okay.
Some people know this, a lot of people don't, but we actually met playing a video game in 2007, as nerdy as that sounds.
Okay. What was the game?
World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
That was long before all of social media becoming what it is today. I think Facebook at the time, you had to have a college email address to even have an account,
Okay.
which obviously that's changed a lot. But yeah, we met through a video game, and here we are.
Very cool.
We've been married, this year was 15 years we've been married.
So obviously living down here, living up there, you chose here. You guys like it better?
Yeah.
Is she happy down here?
Absolutely.
She missed the change of seasons?
Maybe the seasons a little bit, but not so much the cold and the shoveling snow.
So just take her back once a year in the fall. She'll be happy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, burning question: how'd you get in the fire service? I know a little bit, but
Sure.
why don't you share that with us?
So I'll share a little bit of my family history. Again, like you said, you know a little bit. Most people don't know that I am actually a fourth generation firefighter. I told you I brought some props, so I'm gonna pull them out here so you can take a look.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of pictures here. This one here, and then this one is a newspaper article.
Wow.
Let's see, from 1911. This is a newspaper article. These pictures are my great-great-grandfather on my mom's side. His name was Frank Parsons. He was in Syracuse, New York. I'm not sure. I don't have a ton of history on him, but I know that newspaper article you're looking from is from 1911, and he had already been doing it for quite a while there. If you look at the lineup of the guys in front of the carriages there, he's the third one from the left,
Okay.
taller than everybody else.
Well, that checks. Obviously, that's carried on.
Yeah. For everyone obviously can't see on a podcast, the newspaper article, it's horse-drawn steam engines. So it's pretty cool piece of family history there that got me started. Not got me started, but got our family started over 100 years ago now.
Yeah. So for those that can't see it, there's so they're all lined up in their dress uniforms. 2 horse-drawn. It looks like one's a hose cart, and the other one's a steam engine.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, I need to check when I go downstairs, but I believe that I have a muster picture from, it's either 1911 or 1912 from Syracuse, New York. So it'd be pretty cool to look, and it's big. So it'd be pretty cool to look and see maybe he was in that picture.
Could be. That'd be awesome.
That is awesome. As you know, I kind of love the history of the fire service and
Absolutely
collect a few things. So that's great stuff.
So from there, it skipped a generation. I don't know how many children he had, but none of his kids got into the fire service, but his grandson did, who was my grandfather. My grandfather, Robert Wilder, he started in Pulaski, New York. So he still lived in New York. He worked in Pulaski and Canastota for a long time. He and actually my grandmother, his wife, Joan, were some of the first EMTs in the state.
Wow.
Which was pretty cool. They both were. They both went to the classes at the same time. And the way my mom described the ambulances they used to ride was like the Ghostbusters.
Okay.
Yeah. They moved to Venice in 1975, where they got involved with the South Venice Volunteer Department. When they first moved down, he was not initially in the fire department. He started volunteering shortly after, but they actually moved down and moved into the station, if the story is all correct, to be live-in dispatchers.
Oh, wow.
So my grandmother was a live-in dispatcher for a long time there. And then ultimately he ended up becoming the chief there. I got a couple of pictures of him with some of his South Venice uniforms on.
Wow, look at that. Very cool. So South Venice and Nokomis at the time, those were the only volunteer fire departments, I think, in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them had been around for quite a long time. And then South Venice, I think, in the late 90s, mid-90s.
When it closed?
Yeah.
I think it was mid-90s, like 95 maybe.
We always had like a little rivalry between the guys at Nokomis and the guys at South Venice. So it always, we were jealous. We never wanted to say it, but South Venice actually, and of course you can't do this anymore, but I think this was something they brought down from up north. South Venice had a bar upstairs in their station. And of course they weren't drinking and then going on calls, but that was kind of where they went and relaxed. And so we always pretended to be offended by that, but we kind of thought maybe we wish we had the same thing at the time. But yeah.
I've heard that was there. Never really heard any stories about that. But yeah, my mom and her family, they lived there for several years, lived in the department.
Wow.
It was 78 or 79. He became the chief there, and he was the chief there until 1985.
And that was your dad?
No,
Or I mean,
that was
your
my
dad's
grandfather
dad.
on my mom's side.
Oh, on your mom's side.
Yep.
Okay.
I've got a little info about Dad too. Interestingly enough, I believe, if I remember correctly, Chief Ingalls started at South Venice.
He did. Yes.
I think he's the only one that's still here that started there. But I don't remember how long it was. But he was there for at least a little while before he transition. So I asked, I got some information from my dad because I know some of his history, but I didn't know great dates. But he also started in South Venice. If the story's correct, my mom had told me that my grandfather, who was the chief at the time, put an application for South Venice in his stocking one Christmas
Okay.
and recruited him to do it.
Nice.
She said when they would go out, he would always be chasing fire trucks. So naturally, he got in and started volunteering there. He started there in 1981. He was there for probably not, it looks like not quite a year before he started with the city of Venice.
Okay.
He continued to volunteer there for 5 years. He said the only time he wasn't there was when he was actually in fire academy. But October of 1981, he started in city of Venice, worked there for 25 years. When he retired, he was the chief. He also taught their fire academy there for 10 years. We had not as many now, but I know we had several officers that went to that academy.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I was in academy, I went to Englewood Fire Academy, and when I was there, generally was the same thing. Like they would recognize my last name and say, Johnson, like Chief Johnson? Yes, sir. Oh, he was one of my instructors, and I'm thankful that he was not the one that they didn't like. That made it a little easier on me, I think, that he wasn't the guy that was really hard on them, because that academy was tough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. So when I started at Nokomis, your dad he was the chief of Venice. So we ran mutual aid calls. So I got to know your dad back then, and he was a super guy. He still is a super guy, but so I've known him at least in ancillary matter for a long time. I always looked up to him. The fire academy. So there was a guy at Venice. So I went through the last academy for City of Sarasota, which was a pretty well-known academy at the time, a good academy. And Venice was definitely, they were always in competition with each other. They both put out great stuff. But Venice had a guy, and I'm sure you know him, Lieutenant Joe Ferrantino.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't find this out until years later, but I always heard about, there was almost always somebody got kicked out of class in the first night or the first week or something like that. That happened. And
the first
night,
how
is that possible? They're making an example. And so I found out years later that was like it was an actor. It was like somebody that they
was a police officer
that they came in to sit in the class, and then they disciplined him first night and kicked him out just to kind of set the tone. And so, yeah, so yes, everybody was scared to death to go to Venice and start there in the beginning. They definitely had a reputation for a while, so it was pretty cool. So, well, that's cool. So then, what's next?
We'll get to me.
Okay.
So when I was 19, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Dad kind of encouraged me to do this for a short time. He wasn't real pushy about it. I actually went and applied at a department in, I believe it was Athens, Georgia. Went through the written test, did well there, and then got to their physical. And I was 19. I had played baseball. Like I was in pretty good shape, but being in firefighter shape is different.
For sure.
That test kicked my butt, and I didn't pass. They also had, I think it was something like 15 spots and 300 applicants, which back then was pretty common.
Yeah.
I didn't pursue it again after that for a long time. Well, before I got into it, I was working at Verizon Wireless. I had a lot of different jobs throughout the years. Most of them were customer service related, but my brother was diagnosed with leukemia, and he ended up dying. And when that happened, there was just something in me that, man, I got to do something different. And I dropped everything and went to EMT school, like quit my job and just, I'm going to EMT school, and I'm going to go to fire academy after that.
Wow.
And it just it was like it clicked in my brain, like, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Now, what year was that?
That would have been 2017. I started EMT school in August of 2017.
Can we talk about your brother a little bit?
Absolutely.
So, older brother or younger brother?
Older brother.
Okay. So I've talked to you a little bit before, but I don't remember the details. And so, how old was he at the time when he got diagnosed?
He was 30. When he was diagnosed, he was 32.
Okay.
32, 33. And when he was 33 when he died, I don't remember exactly when his diagnosis was.
Okay.
But he had leukemia. I forget which one. I know there's different variants, but I know it was one of the acute versions, which this department is very familiar with.
Yeah.
But he got really sick for initially, and then he came out of it. He ultimately ended up in remission, and then ended up having basically another type of cancer that got into his spinal fluid somehow.
Right.
And caused a brain bleed, and it was rough. But again, that was kind of the thing that triggered me to, man, this isn't it. I gotta do something that matters.
It's impactful when something like that happens to family, and it doesn't matter whether. And I know I follow your dad, so I see your dad's posts, and so I see, when that time frame is coming of the year, and I know you guys always talk about it a little bit and post about it in his memory and in his honor. And as a dad, I know, and now being a dad, that your kids are always your kid. It doesn't matter if they're 5 or if they're 30. Like, that impact never changes, and how that can, the strain that can put on a family is difficult. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that inspired you. EMT school first?
I did EMT school first,
Okay.
which, being in my 30s at the time, that was a little intimidating because I hadn't been in a classroom in probably 10, 12 years, something like that. Had a really great instructor for that, though. She's not instructing anymore, but Skippy Mayhouse, if she ever hears this. But she was a really great instructor, and I started to love it right then. Then went straight into fire academies, weeks after I was done with EMT school. Went to Englewood Fire Academy, did that. And then I was very fortunate that within a couple of months of academy being done, I mean, everyone in the area had open applications, but Northport was where I wanted to work. I did my EMT ride times here and just loved it. And then again, I know Bobby talked a little bit about this, just like seeing the way that the guys from Northport handled themselves, which I wasn't volunteering or wasn't on the job, so it was a little different. But like, I remember days at academy, we used to still do our live fire training there, and we'd show up for academy. You show up early, obviously, and Northport would still be there. And I had met and interacted with some of the guys through my EMT ride times, so there were a few of us who would walk over from the parking lot and ask, like, "Hey, is there anything we can help with?" And usually the only thing we ever did was like carry SCBA bottles. Like, "Hey, if you could go stack these up, that'd be really great." They just finished live fire training. They're tired, so carrying those bottles was whatever. But I understood too, like, the value of the FaceTime of,
Yeah.
they know those things. Something I always tell, students when they come through, especially, or if there's people that come and like, "Hey, what do I need to do to be a firefighter here?" and anything like that. Like, one thing you need to know is that everything's an interview. Everything you do here is an interview. Your interactions, I promise you, people remember, and then those are some of the same people who are going to end up on your interview panel, and they're going, "Oh, I remember this guy." And
Absolutely.
I always thought it was crazy that most of our academy class didn't go over there. I'm like, you realize this is a hiring department in our area. And I just thought that was crazy. But 3 of the 4 people that went over there and did that work here.
That's
And it
great.
was me, Josh McHale, and John Gill.
Okay, great. I always tell people, so having that FaceTime, getting that familiarity, our process is it's pretty fair. It's rock solid. But if you're when those panels meet and they're discussing at the end, because as you know, we do 2 different panels. We do a panel that consists of line firefighters, officers, and from new people all the way up to district chief, and then we do a separate chief's interview, and we independently rank them, and then we get back together. And typically we're pretty close. Once in a while we're off, but most of the time we're very, very close. We get back together. But if we're on the fence about anybody, that's really where it makes a difference. Is oh, well, I've seen that person, and every time we interacted with them, they were chipping in, doing these things and stuff like that. That doesn't give them any extra points or anything like that. But when it comes down close to certainly having that familiarity, or having somebody say, "Yeah, I've seen that person in action," and seeing their willingness to help, their willingness to chip in, it absolutely makes a difference. So
Right.
that's good advice.
And I think it always sets the tone too for this is how you should handle yourself. Like,
Absolutely.
it's not just to try to impress people.
No.
This is what we expect. Like, you should be handling yourself like this at all times, and people are watching.
Yeah.
And because that's what we expect if you get hired here. So I think it's more than just, hey, make sure you try to impress the people you're riding with or whatever, but there's more to it than that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you are putting on a front and you sell us something that we buy, and that's not what you are, that typically doesn't work out, right?
It usually weeds itself out.
It absolutely does. All right, so tell us a little bit about. So you're a guy of faith. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
You guys, so you wrote something and you're involved with the church a little bit, doing some activities.
I am.
All right.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little?
I can.
Yeah.
Yes. So we attend New Day Christian Church. We attend the campus in Port Charlotte because we live just into Port Charlotte, but they do have a campus here in Northport.
Okay.
We've been going there pretty much since we moved to Florida. So since early 2016. A couple years ago, though, I got involved on the praise team, and something a lot of people don't know about me is that I sing.
That's
So,
what I was trying to get to. There you
Yep.
go. Okay. I like that. That's why
Yep.
that's great. So do you do any solos or is this all
Sometimes
okay?
I've done a few.
All right.
Yeah.
So when we put the fire department band together, you're in.
Sure. Only if you're up there with me.
So little known fact, I was actually in a rock band when I was younger.
Let's do it.
So yeah, it was high school years. Rude Awakening was the name of our band. I was the lead singer. I have absolutely no other musical talent at all, but I was able to sing at the time. So
Nice.
we had a good time.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. So, this is what I want to get back to. So Chief Johnson, your dad, Mike, when you decided you wanted to be in Northport, did you have to have like a little sit down with him and say, okay, Dad, because every dad, has a little bit of, well, of course, we all have pride in the department that we're from, right? So did you have to have that little conversation and say, going somewhere else?
Sort of. I felt like it was a weird situation. Like, I knew that this is where I wanted to work. I did apply at Venice, but if I'm being honest, I applied at Venice not because I felt obligated to, but I knew like that's where Dad's legacy was. And a part of why I wanted to be at Northport, though, was not just because I had worked here and been around the guys or whatever, but I kind of want to write my own story. And if I go to Venice, I'm always going to be in his shadow, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it wasn't the number one thing on my list. So I got two kind of funny stories. One of them maybe not funny, but the second one kind of is. When I was applying here, Jess was actually feeling really homesick, like to the point where I was like, "Are we gonna have to move? Because if we're gonna have to move, like I gotta know now." And she's always supported me in everything I've ever done. I said, if you feel like that's what we need to do, we'll go, and I will make it work up there. And she was on the fence about it, and I said, "Listen, applications are open. I'm applying at Northport and I'm applying at Venice. And I'm not trying to give an ultimatum, but if I get hired and I start with a department, like I'm not leaving." She said, "Okay." The day I got your phone call, like huge wave of relief for her. And she is so grateful for it. She has never regretted it. Not an ounce of her has ever thought, man, maybe we should have moved.
That's awesome.
So that was a really cool moment. But the the funny thing with Dad is I had been hired here. I had done my LifeScan physical, and we had a start date. And at the time I was working at Ambitrans while I was kind of in between, and Venice called me while I was at Ambitrans one day. And I said, I'm really grateful for the opportunity that that you want me to come in and interview, but respectfully, I've already accepted a position at Northport, and I had a start date. So I told her that, and it wasn't 45 minutes later he calls me.
Phone lines were burning up.
Yep. I said, "How do you know already?" He's like, "Well, Chief Carvey called me." Said, "Hey, we called your son. We wanted to interview him and get him in here."
Chief Carvey called me too. I don't think I ever told you that.
Did he? No,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he called. He said, "What did you do?" I said, I didn't do anything, I promise. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So Chief Carvey's retired now, but yeah, he was always a good guy. We had a good relationship. And honestly, when your dad, so on another podcast, another time, I'll tell the story, but the Northport story, back in the 80s when your dad was in the fire service, Northport was really just kind of coming together. And the chief that brought it all together, Paul Caskey, he tells me, the department kind of formulated like as the bad news bears. We were not the elite of the elite, or they were not the elite of the elite. And even when I got hired on, we had a long ways to go. So the department that your dad remembers is nothing like the department it is now. Now I know he's followed it and seen the changes and things like that, but I'm sure in some ways he was kind of like, is it really what he thinks it is? And so
there's probably some level of that.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you said too. We have a lot of legacy candidates here from where some of their dads work here, but even other departments, and the idea or the kinship of working for a department where your father worked is great, but I also agree with you being, it's not even necessarily out from under the shadow, but to
Hmm.
be able to create your own path and create your own legacy. Your legacy is still building on his because he has that service
For sure.
and that history in the area. But now your legacy and his legacy now are making an impact in a whole nother department. So you're actually affecting, departments and cultures and cities in two areas, which is
Hmm.
pretty cool to think about that too. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. All right. What drives you every day on the job?
The job is such a cool thing for us to, there's so many things we could get into and talk about, but one thing, just a simple thing, is just every day is different. We do, some of the same trainings, and we have patients that we run, more than once, obviously, but every day is different. Like, it's never the same when you come to work. What drives me though is, I'm really big on the idea of mentoring. And when I say mentoring, I don't just mean mentoring in like firefighter skills. To me, that's more of like coaching and training, and that's all really great and it's valuable, and we absolutely need that. Mentoring for me though is more of, yes, there's a work side of it where, we're mentoring them to be the better firefighters, to be patient care advocates, helping them get to where they want to go, like achieve their goals. But there's also a personal level of it. We have a lot of guys, like, it's funny to me that, I'm almost 40, and I've most stations I go to now, like, I'm the old guy,
Tell me about
which it's a it's a weird feeling, but we have so many guys who are early to mid 20s and navigating life. That's a huge thing for me because I think culture as a whole kind of leaves that out. Like, you get to adulthood and it's like, okay, well, figure it out. And to me, the importance of having that person or a couple people in your life that you truly can go to, whether it's work related or personal or whatever. I mean, we live a third of our lives here. Realistically, more than that, because most of us have overtime, or we're involved in events or whatever. So we're here more than a third of our lives most of the time.
Absolutely.
So obviously we get to know each other very, very personally, and I want to be able to be that for not just guys on my crew, but and I've developed some of those relationships with some guys in the department, and I see such a huge value in that. And I have been fortunate to develop that with people above me that are older than me and have more experience and life experience than I do. And it's incredibly valuable. And that to me is one of the things that really drives me, just generally speaking, to come here and to really want to succeed and help everybody else around me.
It's shocking to me. I think there's a lot of families and parents with kids coming through school and getting into their late teens, their early 20s as they graduate and do things that, how many things are not that don't prepare our kids for
Life.
adulthood it isn't a fair thing. But yeah, life, just
Mm,
some things that we take for granted, knowing how to navigate certain things and thinking about how to save money and thinking about how to, do a budget and how to, they don't, unless they're in the right class or maybe something hits on it here and there, but there's really not a lot of that. So
mm,
it's great to have people like you. And I get asked the question all the time when we hire people like, well, you only want to hire young guys. I'm like, no, that's not true.
mm,
We'll hire anybody that can do the job. And there's some value to hiring and bringing people into the organization that are a little bit older and that have some life experience and can do exactly what you're talking about, mentoring, and that people get comfortable going to ask questions of things they don't get, if they're, maybe their father has passed or lives in another state or they
mm.
don't, have that conversation or something like that, or their mom, or have that availability or just even the comfort level to ask some of those questions. So that's really valuable.
For sure. And there's a part of me that's like, man, I wish I'd done this when I was 20, because just from a retirement and financial aspect, like, you get into this in your 20s, and you get to retire earlier and all that. But at the same time, like, having some life experience by the time I got here provides a whole nother level of it, and it makes it very different. And I'm grateful for that. Like, I'm grateful that I didn't do it early for those reasons.
Yeah. I feel like I got into it early, but I still look and go, oh, if I'd have gotten into it earlier, and not not necessarily for the retirement aspect, because honestly, I think a lot of people that have a true passion for this job and love this job, when they get to that point where they're almost at retirement, are thinking about, okay, well, where can I go do this somewhere else and
Hmm.
still be a part of something, and and carrying on that passion and being a part, because what we do becomes such a part of, like you said, You're more than a third of your life. You're here, and family is important, but this is ingrained into your being,
Mm-hmm.
and to just walk away from that, for some
It's
people,
hard.
it's hard. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I'm, been here 32 years now, and I'm thinking about what I want to do when I grow up. What am I going to do next? Because I don't know that I just want to walk away. I enjoy it
Yeah. It
every
leaves
day.
a huge gap.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about, if you can think of, what's one or two very impactful things that kind of stand out in your career thus far that have been impactful to you.
So one, you had some conversation with Bobby when he was on about, he failed his engineer test. I failed my first journeyman test. That was, like he said, like it haunts you when you do that. I'll give a little caveat to this, and I tell people all the time when they're coming up to their journeyman test, like, look, I didn't fail because there was something I didn't know. Like it's not that because I wasn't prepared, but you get a lot of anxiety, and when things naturally start going wrong, it's not that anybody's trying to trick you on a test. They're not setting you up to fail. They're not changing something to make the equipment fail. But sometimes something goes wrong. And then you do the things to try to fix it. And then if it doesn't work right away, that anxiety builds because you understand the gravity of the test and what it means to your career and everything. And ultimately, it was a portion of the drafting that I just couldn't fix that day for whatever reason.
So for just real quick, for people listening
Sure.
that don't have any idea what that is, just talk a little bit about, so what is the journeyman test? How do you get there, and what does that mean?
So again, I know you talked to Bobby a lot about this on the first podcast you did, but the journeyman program, it's thousands of hours of training over the course of for our department the first 4 years or so. You talked about the mods and on all of that, and the mods are just kind of a roadmap for what we should be training on, like what our expectations are. So you do all this training over the years, and obviously the mods aren't the only thing. Like you train on a lot of other things, and you get your hands on, and we learn a lot. Then you get to the journeyman test, which is 2 or 3 days, depending on how it's set up. You have a long written test that just tests your knowledge of things. And then it's 2 days of practical skills of all different things, whether it's just checking your tools in the morning, raising and lowering an aerial apparatus with emergency operations if there's equipment failures, and then drafting and pumping and all those things go into it. So it's a lot. And there's always anxiety there because you want to do well. And obviously it's, that test is the biggest test we take.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, just failing that the first time was it's a huge moment, but the way we respond to it is really what matters. And I knew, there's a lot of people that are officers in this department that failed their first one. And again, it's not because like, oh man, he didn't know this. Like it's not that. It's just, man, something went wrong that day.
Yeah.
You had a bad day or whatever. You couldn't fix this issue, lost your train of thought for a second, whatever it was. I don't, but we do such a good job of preparing people for the test that it's like, hey man, if you get to this point and there's something you don't know, somebody has done wrong by you. We do such a great job of feeding the knowledge and the skills and getting hands on and doing all that. And it's impressive, honestly, like once you get there, and what a journeyman for us is normal, but it's a different thing here for sure.
I'm going to challenge a little bit of what you said, and I will say I agree. We're constantly feeding that information, testing on it, doing mods. But there are some people, like it is a day to perform. And for those that don't know, if you fail that test, then you go on a performance improvement plan.
Mhm.
You've got a period of time until you take the test again. And if you take the test again and you fail, you're 4 years into a career and you're looking for a job somewhere else because
Yeah.
you haven't done that. And so, and we have some people that have parted ways after that second test. And that's difficult to do because they've established relationships, they've done things, but sometimes it's not somebody has done you wrong. It's sometimes people haven't invested that time or taken it serious enough, or they just couldn't put it all together. And that's the one thing that it's very tough because we are not in a world where we can exist with participation trophies. Everything that we do is perishable skills. Everything that we do at any moment could be a life or death decision. It could impact somebody's livelihood. So whether it be partners that you're working with or whether it be the community that we serve. And so we take that very seriously. And although it's hard to sever those relationships after 4 years, and we encourage people if they go and if they're not successful, like I still keep in touch with some people and have helped them go have careers elsewhere and, invest harder in themselves and work harder at it and do some things. And some of them have been very successful. It's hard to do, but we certainly, I think, have held the line and held the bar so that everybody understands it's not really just a test to take in school to see if you can pass or fail. Like there's a real life consequence to that.
For sure.
So it's important. And I, now as a lieutenant, it's not so much about preparing people for the test. It's preparing people to be great. Like
Absolutely.
as you know, we try and set that standard at exceptional. And so our goal is whatever we throw at you, you can handle it. Because any given day, we don't know what that call is, what that next situation is, what's going on. We want people to be able to adapt on their feet and handle the situation.
Some of the best advice I remember getting early on, and this is true of the journeyman test and the lieutenant test, really, if you're preparing for the test, you're not going to do well. You prepare for the job and what our expectations are.
Was that Lieutenant Pettit?
He's definitely one of them. Yep.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that Chief Ilma would tell you too, but I've had those conversations many times with Lieutenant Pettit. He was one of my first journeymen before he was a lieutenant, and we had those conversations a lot. Yeah. And he tells people that all the time.
Absolutely a lot of truth to that. And because I think we did get to a point there where there were some people that were just very much preparing for the test and it was kind of going through the motions. But if you change that situation just a little bit or subtle, and we did this last lieutenant's test. We had some people that walked in, they were expecting something and it wasn't what they were expecting. And any one of them could have handled that situation, but in their mind, they thought it was going to be something else, and it was earth-shattering to them. And so we kind of went through, and the idea is you prepared yourself one mindset on how to handle a situation like this. We changed the way that you saw that situation, and they kind of did a little stutter step. So
yeah, and those conversations I had with Lieutenant Pettit as he was my lieutenant. So he took the lieutenant test twice, and he said the first time that's exactly what happened to him is he prepared for the test and he did practice scenarios. He's like, man, when I went in there and it was different, he's like, it was like I had pre-planned my scenario in my head, and then when it wasn't what I thought it was, he's like, it just kind of fell apart. And he said, so the next time I prepared very differently and just worked to be my best and prepare for the job so that regardless of what they throw at me, I'm prepared for it.
And I can tell you as the chief and for all the time that I've been here and all the testing processes I've been involved with. So in my younger years, and probably due to a little bit of immaturity and lack of wisdom and time on the job and stuff, when somebody would fail out of fire school, or where somebody would fail a journeyman test or not do well on a lieutenant's test or something like that, I thought, well, but they're not good. And that's not true. I mean, and I can tell you now, it's great to see somebody go through and perform and kill it, but it's also incredibly rewarding to see somebody go through and not be successful on their first attempt at something like that, whatever that is, and then come back and do incredibly well and see them then advance their career. And although that's difficult for some people it actually prepares them better for adversity and for looking at things in a different way, being a little more reactive on their feet, expanding their brain a little bit to kind of expect the unexpected. So it has some benefits, and it is impactful and challenging. It's something you carry with you all the time. And you heard Bobby talk about it too, but that made a difference and made him better. So same with you. So
when I came back and did my test the second time was when Bobby tested.
Okay.
It was the same day. I ended up finishing first that day, just the way that, the things worked out. And it was me, Bobby, and Michaela. We all passed our test that day. And I remember I was sitting around waiting because we were like, hey, we'll wait until everybody's done, give a little congratulations, maybe take a picture or whatever. Well, while we were waiting, the brush fire came out behind Pink Tequila. That ended up being a pretty big fire. I said, hey, you're a journeyman now. Hop on a brush truck.
Great.
And I ended up on a brush truck with a guy who was still on orientation.
Nothing like throwing you to the fire, literally, right?
Great. Thankfully, when we got there, it was then Chief Coyle jumped on the back of the brush truck with me, and I mean,
gave you a little bit of sense of comfort. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's nice to have that.
So that was a fun experience.
I remember that day. It was during the Strawberry Festival, and I was actually at the Strawberry Festival when that call came in, and
Mhm.
I was getting pictures and video, and I'm like, there's no way I'm making it back. So I started coming back. You guys had a handle on it before I got back, but I remember very specifically that day. I
Yeah.
had forgotten that there was journeyman test that day, though.
So something I want to kind of shout out while we're talking about journeyman tests and when I failed that one. Something that's always been impactful to me, and I know I'm not the only one, is the way that you handle the department and you try very hard to be involved in at least somewhat to know everybody that's here. You called me that day, I think within an hour. And if I remember right, I think you were on vacation in North Carolina. Maybe it wasn't North Carolina, but you were on vacation somewhere, and you called me, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, so I didn't answer. But you left me a really great, encouraging voicemail, and if I'm being honest, I still have it on my phone. But it means a lot to be in a department, and I think that's something that is hard for a lot of guys to understand that work at bigger departments where you ultimately end up kind of just being a number.
Yeah.
To have senior leadership that cares enough to go, man, I know that's tough. And not only did you call to just say, hey, man, I hate that happened to you, but I'm confident you'll bounce back. You remembered, like in their voicemail, you remembered some of the other stuff that I had done over the past year or so. And sometimes we load our plates real heavy.
Yep.
So just the fact that on the fly, you're on vacation, they call and say, hey, he failed. For you to call and not just have that, but I knew it was more personal than that. So I just want to shout that out. And that's one of the great things about working here is we are still a department that's at a size where that can happen.
I appreciate that. That means a lot. And over my career, I found out that impactful moments like that, those things are important to me too, but I don't realize sometimes the impact that they have on other people. So it's nice to hear that. And as you know, I care about all of you guys. I'm going to be a part, and that gets harder and harder as we get bigger. And it's one of the things that I think, tried to continue. And that's where I tell everybody it's so important. And you now being a new lieutenant is to make sure that, our people coming in the door, we have a really young workforce now. And I think 60% of our people are under 5 years. That's significant. And to be performing at the level that you all are on the street with your workforce that young is a testament to how hard everybody works, because we are far outperforming our years of experience, quite honestly. And that's through good leadership with you guys on the street and through good mentorship and all of that other stuff. And then maintaining that and making sure, people will work really hard if they know somebody cares. And then, as you said, we're here a lot together. And so that having that dynamic and that relationship is important. So I appreciate you sharing that. If you could change one thing in the fire service, whether it's local, regional, industry-wide, whatever, what would it be?
So I put a little thought into this because you've asked the other two this question. And I think it's a great question. I think the thing that I would change, and I'm working to change, I'm new to my crew and my station, but I'm working to change it at least on our level. I think somewhere along the lines, at least to some extent, we've lost the concept of kind of bringing families in. Not that I think there's anybody here who would ever be like, no, your family can't come to the station. Like that, there's none of that. I've never experienced that. There's nobody here that would ever say that. But I think encouraging it there's a different level of, it's different. Having been on a crew where that was a thing, when Chief Inlow was our lieutenant at 82 on weekends. A lot of times on weekends, we always share dinner together. But on weekends, usually, especially Sundays, we usually we share we have breakfast. That was our thing, was like weekends, like, hey, invite your families. Jess and the kids were at the station a lot, and Heidi was at the station, and, guys' wives, fiancés, girlfriends, whatever. And that made us closer. And I think it's incredibly important to be able to bring that in for a lot of reasons. I mean, one is it's good for us to have our families there with how long we're gone. Like, how could it not be a benefit for us to be able to at least sometimes have our families come in and be around us there, and for us to get to know each other's families? Like, I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's important for them. I think it's incredibly valuable for them to be able to come in and see what it's like when we share a meal together. And not only that, but, inevitably sometimes calls come in, and for them to be able to see what it's like where, hey, we're in the middle of a meal and the call comes in and we get up and go. And it's abrupt because, we get out the door fast. That's how we operate. Like we get up, we go. And I think for them to see that is really impactful too. And then it ultimately gets them talking and gets them familiar with each other, which I think is another huge part of it. Like being able to try to build that community of spouses and kids that know each other and can rely on each other if something were to happen or whatever it
Absolutely.
is. Because if you don't work this type of job, like families that don't have somebody who's in the fire service or maybe as a police officer or something like that, it's a different thing, and you can't understand it unless you live it. So I think there's so much value that comes into having families come to the station, and that's something that I think along the way we've lost a little
Ab-
bit.
Absolutely. I always enjoyed having family come and Sunday breakfast.
Hmm.
And I always tell everybody if you involve your family more here when we have an event or we have something that, the poinsettia parade or the boot drive or, whatever it is, the fall, remember the fallen 5K. If your family's involved all the time, then your kids and your spouse and your family looks forward to coming to those events because they have that familiarity. They
Hmm.
look forward to being there. Them coming to the firehouse isn't, intimidating. And they know sometimes, yeah, you're going to get up and you're going to go on a call. Whereas if they're not here, they don't have that familiarity. It's a little more uncomfortable as who do I talk to or where do I go? Because we tend to, when we get together in a group too, we tend to start telling stories and we talk a lot.
Hmm.
And my wife tells me all the time, I'll just be over here. So I tell her, the more she's been involved, then she develops, her own network of people to talk to so that if I'm busy talking, then she does, or it engages us together with them. And of course, my kids, grew up being around the firehouse. And I was going to ask you about that when you were little. Did you go to the firehouse a lot in Venice to see your dad?
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of memories of necessarily going at meal times, but we were there a lot. One thing I do have memories of though is being out at the academy.
Okay.
Um, I remember that, that was when they still used to do like the oil pit, and they do those burns, and they had a school bus out there that they would burn. And I remember being out there. He would take us out there on those nights, or I'm sure mom drove us there, but
Yeah.
we'd go and we'd hang out in the classroom. And then when they'd start burning stuff, like we're outside just watching. Like I have memories of that. I have memories of, some of the guys in the stations, and, Joe Fiorentino was one of them, and just different guys that, so yeah, we were there a lot.
Well, and I like the idea too. And one of the things we're going to work on for later this summer, and I've talked to some people in the community that are going to help us put it together, is getting together with spouses or significant others to talk about it because PTSD and trauma and the things that we deal with, is very impactful in our career,
Mhm.
and certainly, nobody sees it coming. And some people it's more impactful than others, and some people you would never expect it, and it depends on how full that bag gets. We don't know when that's going to happen, and what we have found historically is a lot of times, if somebody's been struggling at home for a long time,
Mhm.
their wife knew and their family knew that something was going on. They were struggling, but they didn't know why. And by the time we find out about it, a lot of times, it's been already been difficult. It's been a long time, and now there's some, they're upset because they think we're not doing anything when we didn't know about it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of trying to connect the dots and get family involved more and have that network so that when something seems off, came home today, he seems a little bit off, or there's been a repetitive pattern of him being, having a shorter fuse or doing some things, they can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, is this normal? Are you experiencing that? Or have some resources and availability to go to.
Yeah.
So it's important because otherwise, I heard one of the wives of one of our firefighters said to me, she said, I don't want to betray my husband.
Mm.
I said, you're never betraying your husband. Like, this is what we're here for. But I can also understand if they've never had that conversation or been exposed to that, that loyalty, of course, is deep, and we're very prideful. And I can understand how somebody would think that. So it's a good opportunity to have that familiarity, doing the things like you're talking about, having meals, getting together at events and doing things like that. And then now having a little bit more of a formal presentation, but a casual conversation about resources that are available out there and people you can reach out to and do stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it's great. And I appreciate you doing that. And I would encourage all of our officers to do that because I think it's a big part of what our long-term success is too. We're going to go through
Mhm.
good times and bad times. with the economy, with the community, with, I think we do a really good job at managing the things that we can control. So things that we can't control, sometimes it can be impactful on us. And if our culture is strong and we care about each other and we keep family close, we can manage and navigate through those things that we can't control and still stay, tight knit. So I appreciate that. If you had a fire EMS leader, mentor, kind of that speaks to your soul, who would it be?
I think you probably know the answer to this already, but Chief will know. Before he got promoted to lieutenant, I think I had maybe worked with him one shift. Like, I didn't know him well. I knew his reputation. I knew him through like the journeyman testing and some trainings and things like that, but I didn't know him really well. He got promoted and came over to 82, and we had our crew there, and I mean, we hit it off immediately, which, knowing the reputation that he had, I was a little surprised by that. Not in a bad way, just, he has this reputation of like, man, you look at him and you think, God, that guy knows everything. And he's been doing this a long time. He's incredibly knowledgeable. And I know in the past, he had a reputation for being pretty hard on guys because he wanted them to be better. The intentions are always good,
Sure.
but he was tough on people. And that's kind of the reputation that I knew of him. And then coming in there, and he set very clear expectations. It's funny, I think we talked about this in my interview, like his expectation, we had a phrase there, just DYJ, do your job. That meant more than just those 3 words to us. We knew what that meant with him, like, be exceptional. When we strive for that, we hit the marks. And really quickly, our crew unity grew, and but he and I developed that mentor-mentee relationship, which is honestly something I had been missing a bit. Not that I didn't have other lieutenants that were impactful or journeymen or things, because there's always those people along the way that have great advice and all that, but it's a different relationship. And that's something that he and I developed really quickly. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be sitting, maybe in this chair today, but I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in. He really encouraged me and pushed me to start my task book and start pursuing becoming an officer earlier than I had initially anticipated because of something he saw in me. And if it weren't for him and conversations that we had and that relationship we had, I may not have started that, when I did. But here we are. And I'm really grateful to him. And he wasn't a lieutenant long because he got his promotion.
Yep.
But he and I still have stayed in touch. Jess and Heidi's his wife, they go out like once a month. There's four ladies, but they became pretty close, and they get together for coffee once a month. And so it's, kind of goes back to that whole family thing. Like, he wanted to know my wife and my kids, and it was very clear that it wasn't a chore for him to have families there. Like, he wanted to know them. He wanted to be involved and for them to know his family. And that's where a lot of this kind of stems from. And I don't know, I can't say enough about he was my lieutenant for, I think, just over a year. I can't say enough about the impact that he had. And I'm grateful to still have the relationship that we do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've got about a 5-minute countdown here, so we're going to do some rapid fire. You ready?
All right.
All right. Nozzles, solid or fog?
Solid.
Brush fire or structure fire?
Structure fire.
ALS or BLS?
ALS.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to give you a hard time if you didn't. Cardiac or respiratory?
Cardiac.
Okay. Engine or truck?
Truck.
Or rescue?
Truck.
Hey, the paddock. I like it. Attack crew or rapid intervention?
Attack.
All right. Tech rescue or fire?
Fire.
What's your favorite firehouse meal?
Ooh. Man, I'll tell you the one that I'm probably the most known for in the department. I don't cook it as much as I used to, but I have a sausage and gnocchi dish that if I float somewhere, it's usually requested.
That sounds good. I may have to find out when you're cooking that next.
Okay.
So is that your favorite meal that you cook, or is that your favorite firehouse meal, period? Or both?
Man, I don't know. I have a lot of meals I cook. Like,
Okay.
if I'm not obviously I'm not on a rescue anymore now, but if I wasn't on the rescue over the years, like, I'm probably cooking, and I have a pretty wide array of.
Are you still taking that role now that you're the
Yeah,
now that you're the Lou?
Absolutely.
Are you teaching some of these guys how to cook?
Trying.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I like to eat good food.
All right. I like it. Favorite firehouse, favorite tool?
Favorite tool?
Mhm.
Oh man, that's a tough question. Cutters and spreaders.
Okay. She'd like to tear stuff up a little
Sure.
bit. Okay. Perfect.
We don't get to do it a lot, but it's fun.
All right. And as we wrap up today, any kind of final thoughts you want to share with us?
I don't know. I mean, I'm so grateful to be where I'm at. This department has provided a lot of opportunity for me. I feel like since I've started here, it's been nonstop. And it's funny. I always think when I get to the next thing, like, maybe I'll just kind of chill for a little bit, like finish my paramedic and my journeyman. I was like, I think I'll relax a little bit. And then I jumped right into task book and getting my degree and all the things that entails. And I'm not a guy who can sit and not be working towards something a lot. But I think that's something that I think more people should kind of look to. Not necessarily that you always need to be busy, but some advice that I got early on was don't ever let your lack of education or a certification or a degree or something like that hold you back. And that's where I think some of that desire to always be working towards that next thing comes from. So if there's anything I could encourage, younger guys, newer guys to do is like, yeah, we know you're busy. We do our job. We run calls. You have mods, all these things, but you got to be working towards the next thing. Don't wait and then go, oh man, now I need to do this, because then you're behind the 8 ball and somebody else is going to take it.
Absolutely. I think
So
that's one of the things I share with the new guys every time they come on board is I tell them that exact same thing. Said, you now figure you take this job, you're going to go to school for the rest of your career. You're going to be learning for the rest of your career. If you're not, you're going to fall behind. And don't let a door be closed to you only because of you didn't pursue education when you have all the other tools.
yeah,
And if you get the education and you don't have the experience or some of the other skills, you're going to learn those, but get the education. So, the fire service has come a long way. I think the police department established themselves as a professional organization before fire service really did. And when you look at report writing, when you look at them pursuing grants, getting federally involved, getting, with legislation and things like that, they really were ahead of the fire service. And for a long time, the argument, and I'm really glad I don't really hear it much anymore, but it used to be, well, if I get a degree, it doesn't make me any better of a fire officer. I understand some of the people that say that. And a lot of those guys that said that were solid tacticians, were great. You could rely on them when it hit the fan, you could rely on them in any situation. But what I always said to them was, well, having your degree wouldn't make you a worse one either. And it prepares you for the other parts of the job. And it prepares you to think outside of the box and have relationships with people, understand how to talk, understand how to put things down in writing, understand how to communicate well. And so there is a huge benefit to that. And it has helped establish us much better as a professional occupation and organization and things moving forward. So
for sure.
that's great advice. I appreciate it. Well, I can't thank you enough. Spending time with you today has been fantastic. I've absolutely enjoyed it. I appreciate you taking the opportunity out of your day to come and do this. So we'll look forward to it. And with that, that's it for today's episode from Boots to Brass, all about the job. A big thanks to you, Lieutenant Matt Johnson, and for all you tuning in. If you like today's chat, be sure to follow Northport Podcast Network. Pass it along to someone who'd enjoy listening behind the scenes of the fire service. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, LT.
Thank you.